descend into madness, please be advised that the following program contains topics and cases describing graphic violence, strong sexual content, explicit language, and elements that may not be suitable for some audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Let's begin this episode with a listener submission I received. I bartend 4 nights out of the week, and we see our fair share of interesting individuals. Ask most bartenders. During one of my last weeks working at this particular bar, I noticed this guy who was around his late 20s to maybe early 30s. I remember seeing him and thinking he was an absolutely gorgeous specimen. Remaining professional, I asked for his order. He orders and we start to talk. On my other shifts, I noticed he would show up. My coworkers even had an ongoing joke because he had come in on my days off asking for me. He eventually figured out my schedule and would only come on my shifts. At the time, I thought it was cute. I was single, he was single, I think. So then he asked me to go out one night for a drink. I agree. But on this date, I realize he is a real piece of shit. He's so rude to the waiter helping us and showed zero interest in carrying the conversation. He just stared at me. I remember saying something sarcastic before I ended up cutting it short. He didn't seem too happy about that. He started to question my intentions, then began to label me as just another money-hungry bitch. I was so embarrassed because he was loud, to the point our waiter and other waiters came to help and tried to defuse the situation. He gets kicked out, then we hear loud crashing and loud banging outside. I call 911 and follow the waiters out. His arm was stuck in his car window. I'm guessing he punched it, but the glass didn't fully break. He looks and sees me and begins to scream. He's screaming how he's going to kill me and that he knows where I live. He started screaming at people nearby. I followed this bitch home. Over and over. It was so disturbing because he pulled his arm out like nothing. Slowly. It was all bloody and he begins to threaten the waiters now. Everyone runs back inside and locked the doors to the restaurant. He stayed around screaming at people, then drove away. The cops took forever, but after giving my report, I went home. I was scared to be alone or even go back to work because I didn't want to see him again, but I never did see him again. Hopefully, he is in prison and not traumatizing some other poor girl.
Welcome to a world where darkness and mystery converge. Navigate the depths of horror and true crime and join a society beyond the ordinary, where buzzworthy topics, paranormal tales, and listener-submitted experiences blend into a realm of the unknown. You have crossed into a place where the unusual and the terrifying are just the beginning. My name is Ralph Anthony, and welcome to the Scream Society podcast.
Hello, Screamers. Welcome into another edition of this variety podcast from hell. After clawing our way out of what felt like the longest election ever, then dealing with the fallout from the results, and still having to see those tacky lawn signs posted up, it's been an eventful few days, and I truly hope you all are doing your best, because I sure am. But it isn't just about me today, because I am joined by Clark Makes Art, who I fangirled over since I began podcasting about 2 years ago, and I couldn't be happier for him to be my first guest on this podcast, especially since he's responsible for the super hot version that you see on the podcast cover art. So let's all welcome in Clark. Hey, Clark.
Howdy.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, no, for sure. And saying that my drawing of you is like the sexy version, like, no, you put out way more provocative, fun pictures.
So for those who aren't familiar with you, why don't you go ahead and share a little about your online presence?
It's very minor. No, I have a nice little fan base. I just basically do a lot of horror art, make calendars, things of that sort from it, some t-shirts, whatever. But it's usually like nightmare related, scream related. 90s horror is my jam.
The best era.
Yeah, for me. But I mean, we're kind of we grew up in that time frame, so we're a little biased.
Yeah, most definitely. I know you do have some projects coming up. Do you want to go ahead and share a little bit about those?
Well, projects besides like just doing like other podcasts and just guesting on there. I know that I'm working on a comic series myself, and it is nightmare related, but a continuation from the old films into modern day, basically. So,
I also know you have the Horror Hotties calendar. I do have to ask you if I can come up with, let's say, like 12 to 14 creators, would you consider doing a Horror Hotties or Horror Hunks podcast slash creator edition?
you know what? If you could give me 25 pre-orders from it, then definitely.
And just going back to that, are people still able to order them?
Yeah, just visit my link or visit the Horrified podcast. I think we have them in our bios.
And you can also find the link in the description for this episode. Now, let's go ahead and get into this episode's Sinister Subjects. Before getting into the usual horror and bizarre elements of the show, I feel I would be doing a disservice to everyone who listens, especially here in the US, if we didn't talk briefly about this election. And I wasn't even going to talk about it, but when Clark and I were bouncing ideas around, he inspired me a little. Now, although I talk about social issues and challenge extremist viewpoints on any side of the spectrum, this podcast has never been a full-on political one, so we won't be getting into specific policies. Now, I will say, though I like to consider myself center-left, more free-thinking, that's just how my brain works. I don't like anyone telling me how to feel or what to do. I've always loved challenging people and going against these quote unquote rules set by, again, any side of this spectrum. With that said, I will never vote for a candidate or party that would harm people of my race, my friends, my family, our community, and set us back and undo years of progress. Going beyond that, my grandparents raised me. I grew up in a Mexican Democratic household. I've seen my grandparents struggle. I've heard stories of their parents' struggles, discrimination, all of that. I've never voted red in my entire life. So to those of you accusing me of being a MAGA self-hating gay in my anonymous submissions inbox because I like to challenge people on certain topics, sorry to break it to you. And I know it's been a few days since the election's results, but I'm still feeling confused. I'm feeling drained. I'm feeling down because I don't like seeing the people I care about distraught, lost, or afraid. I feel helpless because I wish I could do something to help them not feel this way. Where do you kind of stand on all of that, Clark?
Well, it's just one of those things. I mean, obviously, you could see from what happened, it was pretty split down the middle. So you don't ever want to like alienate your fan base based off of like how they view themselves politically. It's people are very passionate, and some people are just kind of assholes sometimes about it. So I think I'm pretty much there with you. I've always considered myself like a middleman. I've always tried to see like, okay, well, if you're so far, I don't want this, or I do want this, like, where can we all meet to kind of at least get to a point where there'll be some peace. I will say though, I do lean more left than right. And then like, I do care about like people being comfortable and all that kind of jazz, and not so much about like making the rich richer. But with that said, when it came to this election, I already knew where I was going to go. Yeah, it's going to be a fun Thanksgiving, but I'm a Capricorn. I'm supposed to come into my villain era soon. So
That has been a big topic, hasn't it? Like, if you should cut off or cut ties with people like friends, family who are pretty much celebrating the outcome of this whole thing. Like, what do you have to say about that? Like, do you agree with that, or?
I mean, sometimes you do need to cut certain people out just for your peace, especially if they have like no bearings on your real life. When it comes to say family, like people you actually do love, you can still like lose a hint of respect, I guess, if you feel like they're voting or being a certain way just because they want to be and not because they're thinking logically. But I mean, like, how many people probably look at you as like the troublemaker coming in to the family functions, you know?
I mean, this is what Friendsgivings are for, right?
Yeah. Well, no one should ever feel pressure that you have to stick with your family just because they're family. If they're not good for you, then there's no point of just being like, it's my aunt, it's my uncle. It's like, no, this is your life. This is not their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But just to kind of end this whole subject, do you have any final thoughts?
Be better, do better. Look into actual policies and look into things that are more motivated than just my side is going to win.
Honestly, I think it comes down to more than just thinking about yourself here. I think a lot of people tend to forget about that. But to kind of end this topic on a somewhat lighter note, I just want to say that if anyone out there or someone you know is having a difficult time right now, please check the episode description for resources that can help. And always remember that you are not alone. And this is definitely a safe space for anyone who's feeling distraught about what is going on right now. And I'm sure Clark's page is also a safe space too, especially for the LGBTQ plus community.
Heck yeah.
Okay, that's enough political talk forever. So I did want to talk about something that I came across, and the only way that I can describe it is both heartbreaking and bizarre. So there's this Canadian author named Jessica, I want to say Waite is her name. If I'm mispronouncing it, I'm so sorry. But she just put out a memoir this past July called A Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards, which is a fantastic book title, and I will be reading this. But the book is about the emotional chaos that she went through after finding out that her late husband, Sean, was living this double life. And almost 10 years ago, Sean passed away on a work trip in Texas in 2015. So Jessica, she was grieving. She was trying to handle things. She uses his iPad to contact the hospital, holding his body. She's just trying to get basic info. She comes across his browser history, and when she comes across this, she sees searches like Houston escorts, complete with like prices and locations. So this is wild. So here's this grieving woman and stumbling across this browser history. Like, I can't even imagine what that would feel like.
I don't know. It's like one of those things where I'm just like, basically like, don't look for things if you're not ready for the consequences of what might be.
But I mean, in this instance, it says allegedly that she stumbled across it by accident.
I mean, she didn't have to continue looking into it though. She could have just been like, I don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I would be one of those people who would keep looking.
I would too, but I wouldn't hold on to it so much. Like if I ever found out something like that, I'd just be kind of like, I mean, well, that sucks. But I mean, we are human.
True. We all make mistakes. Yes. And speaking of mistakes, Jessica kept digging, and it turns out, to make things worse, that her husband clearly was not who she thought he was, because over the next few months, she uncovers that he had been cheating with multiple women, regularly seeing escorts, and just lying about working late. And she even found out that he'd rented a whole apartment in Colorado just for his meetups.
That's wild. Maybe he was a sex addict.
That could be a possibility. It sounds like it. Because he even had this massive stash of, let's just call it personal videos, all neatly organized in folders.
Oh, geez.
So again, putting myself in that situation, I could only imagine that I probably would be like feeling like lost, confused, and angry for doing so much digging. And I mean, in open relationships, they're more of a thing now, but I think those only work if both parties consent. So I'm not talking about that. This is separate. Just putting that out there. If you had done what she had done, how do you think you would react to that?
I would be kind of confused, I guess, just because like if it's that extensive and obviously this person didn't, like, why would you keep proof of something that you know you're not supposed to be doing? So I would just be like, well, I mean, like, I'm a pretty easygoing person. Like, why couldn't you just talk to me? We could have figured some stuff out together, possibly. I don't think that would happen in my situation just because, am I like in an open relationship? No, I'm not. But at the same time, I'm very good with communication and whatnot. So
Apparently she was dealing in a very unhealthy way. What year did this take place again? 2015. So, I mean, mental health was barely starting to be taken seriously around that time. I would say that she coped in a really unhealthy way, because in this book, she even shares that there was a moment in complete grief and fury that she took some of his ashes and she went out to her garden and mixed them with her dog's feces. Yeah, that's probably just her way of letting something out. But then things take an even somewhat more bizarre turn, because she actually goes into detail about taking a small amount of his ashes and eating them. And
But like, why? Is it because she wanted to shit him out or something?
I have no idea. But the way she talks about it, she says that the ashes felt dry, coarser than baking soda, grainier than salt, like some mineral sludge or something in the back of her throat. It is so crazy. So she admits to eating these ashes as a way to just feel something, to reconnect, even though he'd obviously just ruined her whole world at that point. Again, I feel like that's got to be so difficult, just finding out you're being cheated on. Because, like, if they're alive, that's one thing. But I think finding out after they've died, there's nothing you could really do or say.
Well, I guess you'd have to, like, re-grief. Like, you dealt with your grief from losing them, but now you have to deal with, like, was my relationship all a lie? A lot of stuff comes up with it, so...
Yeah, and I mean, and you just had to pretty much do everything. She was married to him. She had to, like, plan his funeral, deal with all his family, all of that. So yeah, that's pretty sad and bizarre and crazy. But to end her story on a very high note, she says that she's moved on. She's in a new relationship. She says she feels stronger, but that piece of her has died with Sean because so much of her identity was just wrapped up in that. So good for her. I do want to check out this book though. Why don't we get into one of the reasons why you're here today, Clark? And it's not political. The iconic supernatural horror slasher, A Nightmare on Elm Street, turned 40 a few days ago, November 9th. And we had been talking about having you on. And thanks to one of my loyal listeners who inboxed us, shout out Chris. Do you remember where you were when you first experienced your first Freddy movie?
Vaguely. So I know the very first time I actually saw any of it was the first one, and it was the scene where Nancy sees Tina in the body bag in the hallway, and I was probably like 4 or 5, and just kind of like frozen there, just like, what is this?
I was on my grandma on my mom's side at her house, and she had this closet full of VHS tapes, and she had the first 3. I remember not wanting anything to do with Freddy because I thought he was so scary looking, but my sister put on the first one, and it scared the shit out of me. Like, I wasn't scared to go to sleep, but the third film, Dream Warriors, that one always made me scared to go to the bathroom at night and look in the mirror because I thought the freaking sink nozzles were going to grab me and slit my wrist. And then I would see Freddy in the mirror. And then I think I came across the second one later on, and I realized it has all these like homoerotic undertones, which was so good. But yeah, I was really scared of Freddy when I was younger.
I had an irrational fear of those kind of sinks too because of that scene. That is crazy. The things that stick with you.
Right. Would you say the franchise inspires your work a little bit?
Oh, totally. I think it inspires my work the most, probably just because of how creative it is.
Yeah.
I would say Supernatural has been my jam usually for like the majority of my life, but I've been going towards slashers more as of late. Like haunted house movies just really aren't doing it for me the way they used to. But I do like a supernatural slasher. So you get Freddy, you get like Candyman, you get people like that, you know?
I actually just rewatched the original Nightmare, and I didn't realize how much that soundtrack it slaps. Like I was like bobbing my head a little bit sometimes. I was like, hey, this is like actually really good. Like the whole soundtrack, like the whole imagery, like Freddy. I think that was when he was at his most scariest.
Yeah, the first two are definitely Freddy at his scariest. Three's still a good mixture, but then it gets kind of comical after that.
That's still my favorite though, the third one.
I would say the same. Three is my favorite, and then I jump back between 1 and 4 as my next.
So as iconic and influential of a franchise this is, I don't think very many people really know that it was inspired and based on a few cases. The idea, or should I say ideas, that sparked A Nightmare on Elm Street, it came about when director and creator, the iconic legendary Wes Craven, who is also responsible for my favorite franchise, Scream, was in a bit of a slump in the early 80s right after he directed Swamp Thing, which I've never seen. Anywho, Wes was jobless, and apparently he was like looking for his next big idea, something that would bring the horror to life in this new way. Then one day he read an article in the LA Times about a family who had escaped from Cambodia's killing fields and came to the US. Now, they were finally safe, but their young son started having these horrible dreams, vivid nightmares, and he was so terrified that he told his parents he couldn't sleep. He felt like something was after him, something that would kill him if he ever went back to sleep. So he stayed awake for days. Eventually, he couldn't stay awake and he finally fell asleep. Now, at that point, his parents thought the worst was over, but that night they heard him screaming, and by the time they reached him, he had died right there in the middle of a nightmare. Like, can you imagine? This kid was seeing something obviously terrifying in his dream and no one was believing him.
Yeah, that's wild. I feel like too, if that ever happened today, people would just be like, you're fakey. You watched The Nightmare on Elm Street.
I wish people could be a little bit more open-minded when it comes to stuff like that.
I mean, I've had night terrors before too, and I've gone like where you stay up for days, but I would say after the third day, you get like ridiculously stupid.
Like hallucinations and stuff?
I wasn't hallucinating, but I would definitely like laugh over nothing, start crying over nothing. Just your attention span is at a zero almost. It's weird. Couple stints in my life, especially during like high school, where it's just like I hated sleeping. I would have night terrors and I would just stay up because of it.
What's that drug that they use on the movie called Stay Awake?
and in the first one, it's Stay Awake.
So that real life horror story is exactly what inspired the whole concept of Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes liked the idea of something lurking in nightmares that could actually kill you. But also, that inspiration didn't stop there, because to bring the story to life, he needed a villain. So he dug into his own past to find one. Because Wes Craven shared, and I have a eerily similar story to this, not as scary, but similar. So Wes shared that he had this haunting memory from his childhood of a man walking down his street late at night. And somehow this guy knew that he was watching him through a window, and the man stops. He looks directly at him with this really creepy expression, like he could sense that Wes was watching him and his fear. And it turns out the man was wearing a worn old fedora, which we all know Freddy Krueger, he wears one. Now, as for my story, like it wasn't as scary, but I think I was around like 6 years old. I woke up to use the bathroom. Like I mentioned earlier, I lived with my grandparents. It was a small little house. I didn't have a room, so I would sleep in the living room. Anyway, so I would sleep in the living room, and I would always look out the front window because I was scared, because it was really scary around there. Like people would rob houses and people were getting shot at the end of the block, and it was just really scary. So I would always just look out the window. And then on this one particular night, I happened to look out and I saw this woman who was in a long black coat, and she had a long black ponytail. I don't know if it was like braided, can't remember, but she also had on really high black boots, and I mean, she was just walking in the middle of our street and it was really late. I mean, again, not as creepy as Wes Craven's experience because she didn't look at me, but I was so creeped out. So I went to go wake up my grandma and I told her. And when she looked, the woman wasn't there. So she just said, oh, it was probably the devil. Go back to sleep. Like I said, the area was bad. So now that I'm thinking about it as an adult, I'm thinking it probably was a sex worker, or back in the 90s, we would call them hookers. It probably was just a hooker, honestly.
That was my thought. I was like, it's either a hooker or a girl who had too much fashion sense for her own good.
Right. Walking the streets at like 4 a.m.
I have an overactive imagination, and my parents made me paranoid as fuck when I was a kid. Drugs are bad, people. Just say that. But I remember my mom being like, I can see the devil in the misters. And I'm just like, oh, I can see it too. And then my dad would tell me, because they moved into a house when I was like a young child, that I guess somebody had previously killed himself in.
Oh, wow.
They used a shotgun and they shot themselves, and they can never fully get like the blood splatter off of the wall, apparently. But he would say that he can hear people like in the drains, like when he was showering and stuff like that. And looking back at it now, I'm like, okay, you're probably just high on something. But as a kid, that's pretty frightening. Said that people would be choking him and stuff like that at night. Probably my mom.
Oh my God. Probably.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's so crazy that you bring that up, because I have a few family members who used to do some stuff, and I used to hear stories of an uncle who apparently they said he like challenged the devil or something, and that like something held him down and told him like, no, like you don't do that. Like you don't, I don't know, but that shit has always scared me. So
exactly.
Yeah. Do not do drugs, people. Do not do
and if you do, and be careful.
Yeah. Safely. But yeah.
Yes.
All right. Just to kind of tie it all together, that's pretty much how A Nightmare on Elm Street was created. Let's take a break. A Freddy Krueger inspired terrifying but true segment, plus questions after the break.
Are you tired of the same old true crime podcasts? Does it seem like horror podcasts are endless? Not sure which one to choose? Well, I've got you covered.
All right, can we stop? Hi, my name's Ralph, and I'll be your guide through what I like to call a variety show straight from hell. Welcome to the Scream Society. From true crime, crazy extremists, conspiracy theories, to the wildest buzzworthy topics, maybe some spine-tingling horror stories and supernatural phenomena to darken your day, I dissect it all and tell it like it is. The Scream Society. Dare to be a part of the show? Share your personal horror stories and paranormal experiences at beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Join the society and follow on Instagram and TikTok at Scream Society Podcast. The Scream Society. Available on all podcast platforms. When the unthinkable becomes reality, we find ourselves questioning everything, as some stories are too terrifying but true. Welcome back. We've got some more Nightmare on Elm Street true crime. This is a case about Daniel Gonzalez. This is a guy from the UK. He had a serious obsession with Freddy Krueger and Jason from Friday the 13th, that he actually wanted to be a famous killer himself, just like them. So in September of 2004, he went on a drug-fueled rampage across parts of England, specifically London, Hampshire, and Sussex. Over the course of 3 days, from September 15th to 17th, he ended up killing 4 elderly people and attacked 2 others, all while wearing a hockey mask similar to Jason. So he started off in Portsmouth, where he threatened a man named Peter King, who was just out walking his dog with his wife. Peter fought him off and he fled, so he didn't kill them. So after that, he ended up in Hove, where he stabbed 76-year-old Marie Harding to death. The police later found her DNA on his mask, so that mask became a big piece of evidence in the case. Then, after a quick stop back home, he went out again on September 17th, only this time in Towenham, and around 5:30 a.m., he attacked 46-year-old Kevin Malloy, stabbing him multiple times in the face, neck, and torso with large knives that he had stolen. So by 7 a.m., he was breaking into another man's house by the name of Kumis Konstantinos. I hope I said that correctly. He broke into his home, injuring him by stabbing him in the arm. But once again, this target fought him off and he survived. Now, by 8 a.m., this guy was on a rampage. By 8 a.m., Gonzalez was in Highgate, still looking for houses to break into. He managed to get inside one where he murdered an elderly couple, Derek and Jean Robinson, and described it as orgasmic. That's disturbing. Now, Gonzalez did have schizophrenia, but he told police that he wanted to feel like Freddy Krueger for a day, so that's why he lived out that whole rampage. Now, the prosecutor, however, argued he was faking insanity to avoid charges, but his mom insisted that she'd repeatedly ask his NHS to get him mental health care, which they dismissed. So later, the NHS admitted they dropped the ball with Gonzalez. However, he was sentenced to life in 2006. But a year later, in 2007, and this is a trigger warning, everyone, he did take his own life in prison by cutting his wrist with a CD case, which is so crazy. But I don't know, Clark, do you think, had Daniel been given the proper treatment, do you think this whole rampage of his could have been prevented?
Maybe the extent of it, but I think he would have eventually done something at some point if he was so inspired by it.
Yeah. Apparently he had just seen Freddy vs. Jason.
Yeah. I'm just like, why aren't you going towards like horny teenagers then? Like, why are you going for older
the
people?
Elderly, right?
Like, if you're going to go for it, go for it.
Yeah. I don't know.
I guess I'm just not like really up on schizophrenia myself too, so I don't know exactly how it works. But I don't know, it just sounds a little too premeditated. Like he was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, like he wanted to feel like Freddy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just like, I don't know. I think even if he got help, he obviously knew it was right from wrong regardless. So maybe they could have like steered him in a direction of like admitting him somewhere if needed. And that could have helped, but that's about it.
Yeah. But even then, like, they don't even, like, it's so sad. You can't, I know it sounds so awful to say, but you really can't force someone who's like sick like that, like to get help. It's so sad. They would rather leave them in the street than to help them. It's so wild. I don't know. That's a whole different subject. But I just want to thank you for being open to having these difficult, if you want to call them that, conversations with me, Clark. Thank you.
Oh no, I'm an open book and it's to a fault.
But here's the real question now. Are you ready to have some fun?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's get into some questions now. If you would like me to share an experience of yours, share something you find creepy or interesting, or simply want to ask me a question, head on over to beacons.ai/The Scream Society and click the Society submissions link. Remember, everything remains anonymous. This one says, was listening to another pod and felt this would be a good topic for you to cover. It's on shifting realities. Say you fell into a coma, shifted realities, and woke up in an entirely different reality for what felt like decades, living a full life with a family, career, and eventually death. How do you think waking up back in your original life would be? Now, I obviously chose this question because it kind of went with the whole like dream nightmare theme that we have going on, but apparently it's a thing. Like,
nice. That's pretty rad.
Right. How would you like wake up like after just experiencing something like that?
I don't know. Like, I would have a influx of emotions because first of all, it's like watching other TV series that have kind of done the same thing. I'm like, well, is this a fake reality? Like, what's going on? Like, which one's real, you know? And then also a part of me would be kind of almost grateful that it's like I get another chance at life, because if the other one was like decades old, that means like I'd be way older. So I'm just like, oh, I'm younger again. That's kind of cool.
I don't know. Like, I would just think it was like a long dream.
Right. But maybe I don't think everyone's as descriptive in their dreams as, like, say, you and I are. Like, some people, their dreams are just like whatever, or they hardly remember them, you know?
Yeah. Doing research on this, there's so many stories of people saying that they have or have had loved ones like go into comas. While they're in the coma, they've lived these other lives, and it felt so real to them. And
well, what if it's like a parallel kind of universe, like something where like your brain gets swapped into like what could have been?
Do you ever think about stuff like that too? Like that, if there's someone out there just like you doing something like the opposite of you or something else?
Like, I don't hold much stock into it, but it is an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm just an overthinker too, so I always think about like weird shit like that.
I'm like, somewhere out there's a Clark who's like super buff, like a health nut.
Same, someone who eats better than me and has a 6-pack and all of that. Yeah.
By the way, which is one of the best parts of that Deadpool and Wolverine movie. Was
oh my gosh, that ending.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman's body was insane in that movie. You know he was hungry because that he was shredded. So shredded.
Yeah, the things they do, I mean, it kind of, it's a shitty situation because like they look so good and they have such good discipline to do that, but they're also giving like really unrealistic body goals to a lot of people.
Exactly.
I think he said he's even dehydrated himself by drinking like red wine beforehand. So
oh
that we
my
see
gosh. I think my only issue with that movie was why didn't we see Ryan Reynolds' abs?
Oh, I know, you got him. I'm like, come on.
I know, he still has them. I know he still has them. Yeah. All right. That was a good submission. Thank you for that one. All right. Next one. This one just says share scary stuff.
Like in real life?
Do you have anything scary that you would want to share?
I had a time when I was like probably in the second grade with a couple of my friends at a park because they were having a swim party. And we went to the restroom to get changed and somebody was blowing up the bathroom. So we were making fun of him by doing like little fart noises on our arms and laughing. And he was cursing at us basically, like, you little shits and whatnot. And then finally came charging out at us. And that was pretty scary.
Did he like attack you guys after like?
He like picked one of my friends up and like shook him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We're like little kids, so that was pretty frightening.
I mean, mine's pretty much similar. It's like I was in like 6th grade. I used to walk to school with a group of the kids from my block, and like I said, that whole neighborhood was kind of sketch. So I think we were coming back home or going to school. I think it was on the way back to school. We used to have to go through this alley to get to our neighborhood, but this one day that we went there was just this guy standing with no shirt and in his boxers. And I mean, I was younger, I didn't really think anything of it, but I did notice that his boxers was like sticking out a little bit. So yeah, so I think he might have been on something, sadly. But one of my friends like kind of whispered, she's like, did you guys see that guy's dick is out? And we're like, what? And then we like look, and like, you know, like how kids are, like we make a big fuss about it and go, oh my God, like, oh. And then he heard us and he like put his arms out like, what? And then he started chasing us and we all just ran and like were screaming, and it was so chaotic, and I just ran home and
chasing you out.
That was it. Yeah. He was chasing us with his heart on. So I mean, that's pretty scary for a 6th grader. I had another
one. I think I was like junior high, and we had rented the What Lies Beneath with Michelle Pfeiffer, and it was coming up on a very tense moment, and it was like one of those like almost like jump scene scares, you know. And like right when that happened, we get a big loud bang at the door. And of course, it scared every single one of us. So then my dad goes and checks it out, and it's like police officers. And they said that somebody had just like brutally attacked somebody and was jumping into our backyard. Yeah, so that's pretty creepy too, because then I had to like sleep the whole night being like, I think he jumped from like one neighbor's backyard to our backyard to another. So he's like leapfrogging it.
That used to actually happen a lot too in my old neighborhood too. Mm-hmm. And then like the helicopter would be flying over and like shine that big like spotlight in our neighborhood, so it would look all bright in our house. Yeah, we used to call that the ghetto bird. Yeah.
We had an interesting cast.
Yeah. We've seen a lot. All right, keeping it moving. This one's going to be fun. AI, yay or nay?
I'm so torn on this because, like, actually, as like a digital artist, it's disheartening sometimes when somebody can easily just type in a prompt and it makes a picture that would take me like a week or something to make, you know?
Yeah. As someone who's been guilty of using it in the past, especially for the old podcast, I have kind of changed my outlook on it. I don't really care for AI, although I'm pretty sure like we're all using AI to an extent because I feel like it's put in everything now. Like if you go on Instagram and search something, it's powered by AI. If you type in on Google, powered by AI. So I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's taking over. But as far as like the like pictures and stuff goes, I mean, and you can tell when someone generates something from AI because it has like a certain like purple like tint to it. I feel most pictures do, and I don't know. I'm in a attention to detail kind of person, so I literally look at everything. So I can honestly clock an AI photo.
So you don't like the wavy fingers?
Yeah, it's where they have like 7 fingers or like a sharp, one's like sharp and one's cut off and it's all meshed together.
Or like
so yeah,
foot's turned around.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the word, like Halloween would say like Halloween or something like that. It would say something like completely not what it's supposed to say. But yeah, I think that's why I went to you this time around because I don't know. I feel, and I'm not trying to hate on anyone who uses AI. Like I'm sure it's a great tool. I'm sure it's fine. It is getting a little scary, but I don't know. Like you said, I think it's kind of disrespectful to like actual artists who put all their hard work into it. And like I said, like that's why I reached out to you to do the artwork for this new podcast that I was doing, just because I just wanted to feel like more like authentic and just, you know, like have actual hardworking creators like go into it. So
I think that's the frustrating part about it. It's just like, say someone for like me, it's really hard to get my stuff out there. It's very niche. And there's so much of it that it's just kind of, I mean, like other stuff as well, that you get kind of like lost in the fold. And then you'll see someone, like I saw someone recently do like book covers basically based off of horror.
like the Goosebumps one, or no, what was it?
Yes, it was the Goosebumps ones.
It was Scream, wasn't it?
Yes, and I didn't really want to call it out because like they're great. I love them. But at the same time, it's just like I know this is AI and it only probably took you like 10 minutes of like editing it, you know?
Yeah.
And you get so much attention for it, and you're just it's almost like a sense of like jealousy, you know? And it's just like I could stop doing my work and just do AI and get more attention.
I can honestly put myself in your shoes and just I would be very upset. It's crazy how like AI can just get tens and thousands and just go viral, and then, you know.
Yeah, I try to chalk it up too, though. It's also about like how you market yourself, because I don't really market myself. I barely put myself out there in the sense of like me as a person. So, because I've had people reblog my stuff and they'll get like 10 times as many like likes and comments than I do personally. But just because like, say like I have, I don't know, like 1,300 followers and they have 20,000, it's seen by a lot more people, you know?
Also, I feel like you do have a lot of great supporters behind you too. I mean, like Jasper's one, Killer Fox too, no?
Yeah, of course, they're amazing. But it's just one of those things where it's like those take time, and then you see AI and you're just like, okay, I can quickly get attention for doing like barely any of the work. And it's kind of almost like seducing in the sense of like, I don't want to put all this work into it. So I'm torn on it.
As far as the AI goes, I would probably say nay for right now, but I'm not gonna come for anyone who does use it. I know there's some people who don't have like certain resources, and I'm sure this comes in really handy. So if you like AI, just go off, but when it starts taking over, don't say we didn't warn you. But am I guilty of using it? Yes, I am, but I try to stay away from it now, just because it's scary.
Lock them up.
Anyway, moving on. I feel like you kind of answered this already. This one says most challenging art. I don't do art. I mean, podcasting is pretty challenging. If y'all want to know about that, but I talk about it all the time. So I think this one's towards you. Most challenging.
You know what? I've been pretty decent at portraits. I would say like my hardest part is body anatomy, in the sense of like getting like the arm length right, things of that sort. That's why I like a reference to like kind of like help. But if you have me like just out of the blue, just like draw like, oh, hey, can you draw this girl doing this? And I have no reference to kind of like guide me. I'm gonna look at it and be like, is her shoulder sticking out too far? Like, what the heck's going on here? I'll say with the horror hotties, the one that was the bane of my existence was Gail Weathers. Because I think Courtney Cox is gorgeous. I think she's a beautiful woman. But sometimes when you draw some people's faces, you're like, it's not coming out as pretty as I want it to be.
Yeah, she looks good. I feel like she looks good.
Yeah, but that took me like 6 faces to do.
So she was your most difficult one for this calendar.
Yeah. I would say my easiest one, Neff Campbell, is actually pretty hard too, because she has like some features as well that might not necessarily translate as beautiful to like really give like the prettiness that she is. I would say the easiest one for me was probably Sarah Michelle Gellar, but I think it's because I've drawn her so many times before.
I love her. This one stole from Twitter. Are you ready?
Yeah.
The Substance or Long Legs?
Well, this is kind of hard because I was having some sexy time during Substance, so I didn't like catch the whole movie.
Oh.
But from what I saw, I enjoyed it better than Long Legs, because Long Legs is just kind of weird. But I do like going like, let me in now.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah, I think I would pick The Substance. I'm obsessed with that film right now. Long Legs, that's a whole other conversation, but that's like a true crime movie. It's not horror.
It is.
It's not really horror either. Yeah, it's like true crime. The Substance,
because of the end, how it gets like almost like with the dolls and like paranormal kind of.
That could be why they like considered it. And apparently like there's like 15 images of Satan throughout the whole film. Like you have to kind of spot them. That'd be a cool drinking game. Watch Long Legs, and every time you spot Satan, take a shot. It actually would make the movie more enjoyable, in my opinion. But no, The Substance, I've been obsessed with it. I think it's so good, and maybe I just relate to it more because I am seeing these changes in my body too. So I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna start rubbing my face and smearing lipstick on my face and pulling my hair out because I have 2 more white hairs in my beard. And yeah, like I felt so bad for Demi Moore's character.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think she's looked great.
She is beautiful, but I think that has a really strong message that obviously everyone goes through and has their own insecurities. But just the film itself, I really enjoyed the outlook on the industry and how people view women's bodies and how women view their bodies. And this character, this Elizabeth Sparkle character, how she pretty much did all of this destruction to herself based off of all of her insecurities and all of the pressures that the industry was putting on her. And I don't know, I felt the film just did an excellent job at executing the message. And then it went absolutely bonkers. Not to give too much away though, because it is a monster movie. Just putting that out there. But Demi Moore's performance was just fantastic. She acted her ass off. The concept I felt was well executed. The body horror of it was well done. I'm a sucker for practical effects, so everything that film gave us is exactly what I wanted. I think if you can look past all of the madness and the monsters and the imagery and all of that stuff, I think the film at its core has a really relevant and impactful message. So
Substance for the win.
Yeah, The Substance wins. This last one says, who would you recast for A Nightmare on Elm Street?
You know, I've actually thought about this not too long ago, because I had someone talking. They showed me like images of like what someone else thought would be recast. I'm like, these are doo-doo. Like, what are you talking about? No. But I was thinking like for like Nancy, it has to be someone like, I don't know, relatable, someone pretty but not like too gorgeous. And I thought that one girl from the Stranger Things, the redhead, would be a good choice because she can really act. She's Sadie Sink. She was in Fear Street Part 2 with the camp one. So I thought she'd be good because she's, first of all, a great actress. And I'm not too current on like the younger people. And then for like, say, like Tina, I was thinking the girl who played the young Sabrina, or not young Sabrina, but like Sabrina on the TV show.
The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Yeah, I know she has an interesting name, doesn't she? I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, she was also in Longlegs. Actually, she was one of the.
She was.
Girls. I think she was like who jumped out the window. Yeah,
I think she would make a great Tina. And then you know who I actually think would actually make a pretty good Glenn would be the guy from Scream 6, the killer. What's his name? Jack Champion. And then for Freddy Krueger, that's a hard one because like. People say Kevin Bacon, which I think Kevin Bacon would absolutely kill in.
No.
But he's a little older. But the person this is a wild card, and people are probably going to roll their eyes at me when I say this, is who was the guy who was on, he was in Halloween H2O. He got the ice skate to the face.
Oh, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Because I feel like he can actually pull it off, and people... probably wouldn't see him as someone who could do that, and I think he could because he has good comedic timing, but he's a serious actor and can be.
I'm trying to picture that.
And then for like the mom, you need someone who could be like a little aloof, but also like take it seriously. And I think Sarah Paulson would be kind of cool.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say Toni Collette, but yeah, Sarah Paulson would be good.
Toni Collette would be a good one too.
Oh my gosh, because I think for the remake they got Connie. I don't know her last name.
Brennan?
She's. Yes. Which we don't talk about that one.
Right. I actually like it.
Do you think if they had given that Freddy like different makeup, do you think it would have been taken more seriously? Because they always share this image of him where he just looks so goofy.
I think it would have helped. But I think the people just weren't in the mood for it, to be honest.
There was a time in film in like a certain era where they used CGI so much that I feel watching it now, it just isn't good.
Well, it is weird because like the weakest points of the 2010 are some of the classic shots they did from the original, but it looks worse in CGI than it did back then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Practical all day. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Because are you up current with like younger 20-year-olds, you know?
I might get pushback for this, but I don't really like watching newer stuff. Like it has to have like a really good story, but like I didn't like Talk to Me because the characters were so unlikable, and maybe it was because they were younger, but they were just a bunch of assholes, and I was like, I do not like this movie because I don't care about any of these characters.
I mean, that's kind of like how a lot of the younger people are, though.
A lot of like younger shows, they tend to have CW acting, and I don't know. It's hard for me to like get invested in it because I'm not buying what I'm watching. So I think that's why I just go back and rewatch old shit, honestly.
And then on the other spectrum, they try to make it overly cool, overly sexualized. Like, what's that one TV show, Euphoria? And I'm just like, I don't think it's all like that. Come on.
Yeah. So for Nancy, my pick would be Melissa Barrera. No, I'm just kidding.
Take off 10 years for her, right? That's gonna be like,
oh my god,
movie status for like 30-year-olds playing 18-year-olds.
Oh my gosh, I always love that one line from Scary Movie, the original spoof film, where they're like all sitting by the fountain, and she's like, they'll probably cast someone like Jennifer Love, huge tits, to play me, and then the guy's like, yeah, and they'll cast people in their late 20s, early 30s to play us, and they all start like laughing hysterically. I just always die because that is so true,
and because they all are probably in their 30s
playing high school students, honestly. All right, Clark, so before wrapping up, tell the society what you have going on and where they can find you.
Yeah, as I kind of said, just working on my comic series now, so you won't see too much new art from me unless it's commissioned. Catch me on Clark Makes Art 87. I think that's on both Instagram and TikTok. And then feel free to send me a message or talk to me. Like I love to hear from people, so do that.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening in. And until next time, I will scare you all on the next episode. Thank you for tuning into the Scream Society podcast, hosted, written, produced, and edited by yours truly, Ralph Anthony. Help the society grow by subscribing on your favorite platform and leave a rating and review. I always strive for 5s. Have a horror or paranormal experience? Want me to answer your questions on the show? Submit to beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Scream Society Podcast. And until next time, I'll scare you on the next episode.